Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another video. We got a fun one prepared today. What we'll be doing is we'll be doing our best bets for all of our Week 14 college football matchups for all the top 25 teams. Completely breaking down the matchups, who's going to win, who's going to lose, what the final score will be, but touching on the best bets, the money lines, the spreads, the over-unders for all these top 25 matchups. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments about these games or any other ones, please drop them below. Every week we go over every single college football game. The top 25 ones, the non-top 25 ones. We break them down, and we also go over every NFL game every week as well. If you're a football fan, if you're a sports fan in general, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can follow along with us. So we have a lot of top 25 matchups this week. Everyone's playing this week. We even have a Thursday Thanksgiving Day matchup. College players should not be playing on Thanksgiving, but hey, it is what it is. Let's go ahead and get started running through these games. Kicking everything off, we have our Memphis versus Tulane number 17 game. This game's going to be Thanksgiving night, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Memphis can actually score the ball. This game could easily turn into a shootout with Tulane. But right now, Tulane is a 13.5 point favorite. The over in here is 55 points. And there's an 86.6% chance that Tulane is able to pull this game off, continuing to have a great season. They've had a really good season so far. They have a lot to play for. So does Memphis, though. They're both competing with one another, both trying to get to 10 wins. Memphis is 9-2. Tulane is 9-2, but Tulane is cruising right now. They got back in the top 25 last week. They want to continue to keep that momentum going, especially if Boise were to falter. They want to potentially represent the group of five in a playoff berth, but they need a couple things to fall their way. They need to run the table here to finish the season, obviously. Get a win here, but you also need Boise State to drop down. Looking at Memphis, right now they're averaging 35.3 points a game, throwing for 281.6, running for 167.9. They're giving up 22.6 points a game. For Tulane, Mensa's been having a really good season so far. He can throw it, but it's also what he can do with his legs that's a game changer. He's closing in on 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, 4 picks. They're averaging 40.5 a game. They have a top 15 offense in the nation, throwing for 216.6. Running for 227.1. They're averaging about 450 yards of offense every single game. Very, very balanced. When you can run like that, you can win the time of possession, which is going to open up that play action passing. And they're only giving up 17 points a game. They have Mensa. They have Hughes closing in on 1,300 yards on the ground. They have Williams closing in on 800 yards receiving. So many weapons, and they're balanced, and they play defense on top of that. I have Tulane getting a win, but it's going to be a little closer here. They win this one 34-27, so I'm going with the plus 13.5, and we do have them covering the spread. And then we're moving on to our Black Friday matchups. We actually have 4 ranked matchups on Black Friday. We have the first one on Fox at 12 p.m. We have 5-6 Oregon State coming off that win versus Washington State. So you want to make sure to keep your eye on them. They are in upset mood right now. They'll be playing 10-1, number 11 Boise State. Boise State probably has the best player in all of college football, and they are rolling right now, especially on the ground. They are 18.5 point favorites here, with a 56.5 over-under, and they have a 91.6% chance to win this game. Boise's cruising right now. They're not just able to run the ball. Madsen's having a great season through the year. He's closing in on 2,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, 3 picks. He can also scramble. He's been known to take off and run for first downs. This is a very multiple offense, one of the highest-scoring teams in the nation with, to me, the best player in all of college football in Ashton Gentry. This guy's putting up video game numbers so far this season. But Oregon State, they just beat Washington State. They just beat a ranked Washington State. They have some momentum going. They want to make themselves heard this dissolved Pac-12 season. They don't want anyone to forget about them. Right now, McCoy's closing in on 1,400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 6 picks. So you do see they have some turnover problems. And obviously, when you're trying to shoot it out with Boise State, you could end up forcing things, which could lead to some turnovers. They're averaging 24.8. Throwing for 211, running for 196. They are giving up 29.5 points a game. Their defense does get torched. Boise's going to love that because Boise has a top 10 offense right now. They're averaging 41.2, throwing for 232, running for 252 yards a game. That's a top 10 rushing team, and they're giving up 23.6. Ashton Gentry's closing in on 2,100 yards. That's right, 2,100 yards, 28 touchdowns. This guy is crazy. Best player. To me, he's the Heisman front runner right now. I have Boise running their way to victory, running through Oregon State, winning this one 38-16. I have them covering the spread, but I'm just barely going with the under. And this next one's going to be a fun Big 12 on Big 12 at 12 p.m. on ABC. We have 3-8 Oklahoma State. What a massive letdown they were this season. They'll be playing number 25 Colorado at 8-3. Props to Deion Sanders' team. Even though they lost to Kansas, Kansas was really hot. They dropped to them, so they might have potentially taken themselves out of contention for the Big 12 championship, but there's still a possibility that they can make it. But they need a lot of chaos this last weekend. Oklahoma State, just a massive letdown, completely fell off the rails this season. The Doak Award winner from last year, Ollie Gordon, he's basically been a non-factor on this team the whole season. They've been way too pass happy this year. Right now, Colorado's 16.5-point favorite. The over in here is 66 points. Vegas has this being a shootout, and the Buffaloes have an 81.4% chance to win this game. For Oklahoma State, Bowman's closing in on 2,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 12 picks. Way too pass happy for a guy who's in his 15th year of college football practically and throws way too many picks. And then Shedeur Sanders having a great season, closing in on 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 7 picks. Oklahoma State, they average 29.6. They're throwing for 289.4, only running for 114.9 yards a game. That's their weakness. They have not established the run game with their veteran offensive line. Thus, they've taken the ball out of Ollie Gordon's hands. They're giving up 34.1. Colorado's going to love that. They're giving up 34 points a game, 285 through the air, and they're playing one of the most prolific passing teams. Right now, Colorado, they average 32.9. They throw for 340. They run for 73.8. They got to get the rush yards up. They're giving up 24 points a game, but we know who they have. They have one of the best wide receiver cores in the country, Travis Hunter, Horn, Wester. So many weapons, multiple guys to spread the ball to, and Oklahoma State's just not going to be able to get pressure on you to force mistakes. They have Gordon. They have Stribling. They are going to get their points probably. They might even have a good run game. Neal ran for over 200 yards this past weekend, so maybe Ollie Gordon will get his touches, but they haven't shown that they can start him yet this season, and this is the last game of the season for them. I have Colorado winning here, 38-24. I'm going to go with the plus 16.5, and we're also going with the under, but still a really good win to end the season. And then at 3:30 p.m. on ABC, we have 2-9 Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby having to completely flip this roster, playing number 14 Ole Miss, who comes in here at 8-3. Obviously, coming off that loss to Florida, they took themselves out of contention for the playoffs. Unless there's just complete chaos this weekend, they are out of it. How does Lane Kiffin and company respond? They had the number one transfer portal team. They had a loaded offense. They have the best defensive pass rush in all of college football. They didn't make it. At the very end of the season, they caved. They lost to an unranked team, but they still have their pride to play for. They can still get the 9 wins here. They can still get a really good bowl game and still finish with a double-digit win season. Right now for Ole Miss, they are 26.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 61.5. They have a 94.9% chance to win this game. For Mississippi State, they just give up way too much on defense. The worst defense in the SEC, one of the worst in the country. They're averaging 26.9, but they're giving up 34.8 points a game. They want to get the run game going. Ole Miss's defensive line is just way too good, and everyone's going to be playing on Black Friday. Right now, Dart's closing in on 3,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. Some boneheaded mistakes he made this past weekend. He cost him the game versus Florida, but it is what it is. You need the rebound win here. They're averaging 38.5, throwing for 372.8 points a game, running for 170.9, very balanced. They're averaging over 500 yards of offense. They're only giving up 13.9. They're only giving up 87.5 on the ground. They have Dart. They have Parrish Jr. They have a healthy Trey Harris, a top 3 wide receiver in the nation. I have Ole Miss winning this one, 42-17. I do not have them covering the spread, and we're just barely going with the under. That's a massive spread for an in-state rivalry constant game, but still, I have Ole Miss getting a dominating win. And then our final Friday game at 7:30 p.m. on ABC, 7-4 Georgia Tech, who's much better than their record. They'll be playing 9-2 Georgia Bulldogs, who come in at number 7. Don't think Georgia's just going to curb stomp Georgia Tech and they have no chance. Don't forget last year, Georgia Tech almost upset Georgia last game of the season. I'm not saying that's going to happen this year. It's just you want to make sure to remember that. Maybe that's going to make this game personal for Georgia. They want to go into that SEC championship running hot. So you want to have a really good previous game right before the SEC championship. Right now, Georgia, massive favorites here. 19.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 53 points. The Bulldogs have a 89.7% chance to win this game. Looking at Georgia Tech, the big question is Haynes King going to be playing? He's a guy who led the ACC in touchdowns last season. He's been banged up the whole second half of the season. Played, didn't play, played, didn't play. As of right now, there's no word on who's going to be suiting up Friday to play this game. Even if it's Haynes King, the guy's been really banged up, has not been able to throw the ball since he's been back because he hurt his throwing shoulder. Right now, if he does play, he's closing in on 1,700 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 pick. Carson Beck, closing in on 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns, 12 picks. Way too many turnovers for Carson Beck. This isn't even counting his fumbles. He has about 55 fumbles so far this season. They are way too pass happy. Georgia used to play defense. Their offensive line used to dominate. They used to run the ball. They're playing good defense. They're not dominating. The offensive line is not getting pushed, and they have not yet been able to establish a run game. It's very un-Georgia-like. You're going to need that run game in the playoffs. Georgia Tech, they're averaging 27.9. They're giving up 23.1. They do have Jamal Haynes, Singleton Jr. They do have weapons. If they had a fully healthy Haynes King, I think they could potentially get an upset alert recommendation here, but they just don't. They're too banged up right now. For the Bulldogs, they come in here, they're averaging 33.2, throwing for 307.6, running for 129.9. They got to get those numbers up. They're giving up 18.5 points a game. Like I said, that's good, but Georgia used to always be sub 15 every single season. They have Carson Beck, Frazier Smith. Someone has to step up at that running back position to get them warmed up for the playoffs. I have Georgia winning this one, though. 33-13. I have them just barely covering the spread, and we're going to go with the under. And probably the game of the weekend on Fox at 12 p.m. 6-5 Michigan versus 10-1 number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes. How is this the game of the weekend? Well, this is one of the biggest rivalries in all of college football. Right now for the Buckeyes, 20.5-point favorites. That's a massive spread for an in-conference rivalry game. The over in here is 43.5. This game is usually a lower scoring game because it's always two dominating defenses playing, and the Buckeyes have a 91.9% chance to win this game. Obviously, the Buckeyes better not lose this game. Ryan Day needs to get this hurdle off his back. It's been a couple years since he beat Michigan. They don't have Harbaugh. They have Sharon Moore, and they come into this game limping. The Buckeyes coming in at full steam. They just beat Indiana. They are rocking right now on both sides of the ball. They have the number 3 overall roster. Michigan is a shell of their national championship team they had last season. They're going to be throwing in 2 quarterbacks, Orji, Warren. No matter who plays quarterbacks, they struggle to get first downs. They're averaging 23.1 a game, throwing for 148.6 yards a game. That's not going to cut it here versus the Buckeyes. They are running for 159.6. They have Edwards, they have Mullings, but they can't consistently push the ball for 4 quarters. They're giving up 21.5 points a game. They do have a pretty decent defense, but they're going to be on the field a lot of this game. For the Buckeyes, they're being led by Will Howard, closing in on 2,700 yards, 26 touchdowns, 6 picks. He also has 7 rushing touchdowns. They're averaging 37.8, throwing for 268.4, running for 177.5, only giving up 10.7 points a game. That is statistically the number 1 defense in all of college football, and they have a loaded offense. Howard, one of the best 2-1-2 run-to running back punches. Judkins, Henderson, Smith, Egbuka, multiple weapons, multiple guys they can spread the ball out to. They don't even need to keep it in Will Howard's hands. The team is loaded. I have the Buckeyes winning this game, winning it in dominating fashion. This game is personal. You don't just want to win it. You want to make up for all those losses the last few years. They win this one 34-13. I have them covering that big spread, and we're going with the over and setting them up perfectly to be going into the Big Ten championship game running hot, where it's going to be number 1, number 2 Oregon Ducks versus Ohio State Buckeyes. That's going to be a fun rematch. And following that's an SEC matchup on ABC at 12 p.m. 9-2 Tennessee sitting at number 8 right now. Everything's in front of them. As long as they win out, they're going to be making the playoffs as a 10-2 SEC team. They'll be playing 6-5 Vandy. You don't want to sleep on Vandy. That's what Alabama did. They got curb stomped, and Texas almost lost to them also. So you want to respect the Vanderbilt Commodores. But right now, Tennessee, 11-point favorite. The over in here is 48.5. Maybe 79.8% chance to win this game. Tennessee, Nico, you got to get Nico going. He's caved under pressure, caved in conference play this season. You want him to be a little more comfortable going into the playoff week. Right now, he's closing on 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 4 picks. They're averaging 37.4, probably the most balanced offense in the nation, throwing for 238, running for 228, only giving up 13.1 points a game. They have a top 10 defense. They're top 10 in sacks, tackles for a loss, quarterback hurries, very good defensive line, but Pavia and Vanderbilt, they're going to make you chase him. He's closing in on 2,100 yards, 16 touchdowns, 3 picks. It's what he can do with extending plays with his legs. Right now, he also has 16 rushing touchdowns. They're averaging 27 a game. They're giving up 21.9. They're at home. You want to respect him here, but I think Tennessee's going to do just enough to be able to finish the season 10-2, make the playoffs. I have them winning this one, 28-17. That's a push right now, but I do think that line will move by the time that we get to game day, and I'm coming in at the under. And then why not an SEC versus ACC matchup at 12 p.m. on ESPN? Number 15, South Carolina, 8-3. If a couple things bounce their way, they're actually in playoff contention this season. They'll be playing number 12, Clemson, 9-2. Clemson, their offense is rolling right now. They come in here 2.5-point favorites. The over-under's 49.5. They have a 57% chance to win this game. To me, this game is practically a pick 'em. It's a 50-50 matchup. I would not be surprised who wins this game. South Carolina, they have Sellers. Sellers is throwing the ball. He's running the ball, playing very consistent football right now. He's closing in on 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks. They're averaging 32.9. Throwing for 249, running for 182, only giving up 18.2 points a game in SEC play. This is a really physical defense. Clemson, Klubnik playing much better year 2 under Riley. He's closing in on 2,800 yards, 29 touchdowns, 4 picks. They're taking care of the ball. That's the primary thing here. They're averaging 37.6, throwing for 285, running for 195, giving up 22 points a game. Do not sleep on their defense as well. This is the number 9 overall roster. They have Maffa closing in on 1,100 yards. They have Williams. South Carolina is going to counter that. They have Sanders. They have Simon. But it's what Sellers can do. If Sellers is able to establish a consistent game here through the air and on the ground, the Gamecocks can pull this one out. But this game's 50-50. I don't want to go anywhere near this game personally, but I'm going to go with the Gamecocks pulling the upset, winning this one 28-24, going with the +2.5, and we're going with the over. Like I said, though, I would not be surprised who wins this game. It's so close. And then another Big Ten on Big Ten game on the Big Ten Network at 12 p.m. We have 8-3, number 23, the Fighting Illini under Brett Bielema versus Northwestern coming in here at 4-7. They had a really good season last season. They did take a massive step back this year. They're having issues punching the ball into the end zone, but they do have a pretty solid defense. But for the Fighting Illini, 7.5-point favorite. The over to here is 43.5. They have a 71.8% chance to win this game. This is a Brett Bielema team. They're going to play hard-nosed football. They're going to play line of scrimmage football, dominate in the trenches. They're going to run the ball. Their quarterback, Luke Altmaier, closing in on 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 picks. They're averaging 28.1, throwing for 235, running for 146, giving up 21.5 points a game. They have a very tough physical defense. If they were to get to 9 wins, that would be a massively successful season so far, especially because they had a pretty difficult schedule. And for Northwestern, like I said, they're having issues scoring. They're only averaging 16.9. Throwing for 187, running for 97. They're giving up 25.3, which isn't bad because they're on the field for 35 to 40 minutes every single game. On the other side, for the Fighting Illini, they have McCoy, they have Bryant. They have the better defense that will travel with them on the road. I have the Fighting Illini getting to 9 wins here, winning this one 26-17. We have them covering the spread, but we're going to go with the under, just barely. And then one of our underappreciated in-state rivalry games at 3:30 p.m. on Fox. Number 16, Arizona State, 9-2, who could potentially be in the driver's seat to make the Big 12 championship, win the Big 12, make the playoffs. But the Big 12 has a massive conglomerate of teams sitting at the top right now. Something has to give this weekend. They'll be playing 4-7 Arizona. Right now, the Sun Devils, 9-point favorites. The over-under here is 53.5. They have a 71.5% chance to win this game. They are doing things really good right now. One of the more underappreciated quarterbacks, Levitt's closing in on 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. But it's what the Sun Devils do on the ground that gives them the edge. They have a top 5 running back in the nation. They have Scadaboo. They also have Tyson, but it's what Scadaboo's going to do. He's closing in on 1,300 yards on the ground. They are averaging 30.5, throwing for 223, running for 187, giving up 22.8 points a game. The ground game is going to dominate. That's going to give you time of possession, and it's also going to give you those passes in the play action. And Levitt's having a great season. You compliment him with Scadaboo. This is a team that could easily represent the Big 12 in the playoffs. But for Arizona, Fafita, great quarterback this past season. Not so much a great season so far this year, but obviously coaching change. They had a lot of roster changes. They're averaging 23.1. They are giving up 30.2. There's going to be opportunities there for Arizona State to throw and run the ball here on Arizona. But what can Fafita do with McMillan? That's one of the better quarterback wide receiver combos in the country. McMillan's a first-round quarterback easily, maybe a top 15 pick. Feed him the ball consistently. That gives you upset potential here. But I'm going to go with the Sun Devils winning this game and making the Big 12 championship, getting to 10 wins. They win this one 34-24. I have them covering the spread. We're going with the over. And now some Big Ten football, 3:30 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. 4-7 Maryland versus number 4 Penn State, 10-1. Penn State cruising right now, Everything's in front of them. Even if they lose this game, they're probably still going to make the playoffs. But obviously, I don't have them losing this game. Let's be honest. Penn State and that defense, they're going to get after it here. Right now, Penn State 24.5-point favorites. That's a huge spread there. The over here is 50.5. They have a 93.2% chance to win this game. They have one of the better 1-2 running back punches in the country. They have Allen. They have Singleton. They have Drew Aller, the experienced veteran quarterback. He's closing in on 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. They're averaging 32.4. They're running for 193 yards every game. One of the better running back teams. They can keep those running backs fresh, rotate them through the game. They're only giving up 14.6 points a game. That's a top 10 national defense. And for Maryland, they're averaging 25.2. They have Edwards Jr. He's closing in on 2,900 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. Loxley loves to vertically push the ball down the field, but will you have time to throw on Penn State's defensive line? They are giving up 29.2 points a game. Penn State's secret weapon, the X factor, is Warren. Warren makes those big catches in big times. I have Penn State winning this one. Winning it 37-13. Right now, that's plus 24.5. That spread will move, and I have them coming in at the under. Both of those really close, but those lines are going to move by the time that we get to game day. And this next game is usually one of our better rivalries in college football, but not so much this year. Number 5, Notre Dame at 3:30 p.m. on CBS. They are 10-1 versus 6-5 USC, who's just struggling to move the ball right now. Very un-Lincoln Riley-like. Right now at Notre Dame, 7.5-point favorites. The over here is 51.5. They have a 70.9% chance to win this game. Notre Dame is cruising, but you can't look past that loss to NIU. When you lose to NIU, you cannot afford to lose to anyone. Do not overlook anyone. If they drop this game without a conference championship, if they finish 10-2, they will be out of the playoffs. As long as they win this game, they're in. Nothing to worry about. They don't necessarily throw the ball well, but boy, can they run the ball, and they play elite top 5 defense. Right now, Riley Leonard closing on 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, 4 picks. They're averaging 39 points a game, throwing for 205, running for 222, but they're only giving up 11.6 points per game. That is a top 5. That's almost number 1 in the nation. They get after it. Props to Freeman, props to Denbrock, props to Al Golden. Right now, USC, they're averaging 29.3. They're playing quarterback carousel right now. They have a lot of moving parts, throwing for 293, running for 144. They're giving up 21.2 points a game. Much improved defense over last season. But obviously, Marks, Lemon, Branch Lane, they have weapons there, but it just has not been a consistent year from them. Started out really hot, flamed out really quick. For Notre Dame, expect a steady dose of Love and Leonard in the run game. They're going to wear down USC to where they own the second half and they run the score up second half. I have Notre Dame winning this one comfortably in the second half, winning it 33-18. I have them covering the spread, and that would put us just barely at the under. And the next one of our games that could decide who is going to the ACC. At number 6, we have Miami, Florida, 10-1 at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN, playing at Syracuse in the Dome versus 8-3 Syracuse. Syracuse, you don't want to sleep on Syracuse. Syracuse is a really good team, especially offensively, vertically pushing the ball down the field. But what version of Kyle McCord do we get here? 3-4 touchdown version or 3-4 pick version? Right now, Miami 10.5-point favorite. The over in here is 67.5, and they have an 81.7% chance to win this game. Miami, they're going to be led by Heisman hopeful Cameron Ward. He's already broken every single Miami passing record, and he's going to continue to pad those stats here. This guy's lighting it up at the quarterback position, closing in on 3,800 yards, 34 touchdowns, 7 picks. They're averaging 44.7. They still have the number 1 offense in the nation, throwing for 373, running for 181, giving up 22.3 points a game. Their weakness is their secondary. Bad tackling, bad angles. They did play a lot better versus Wake Forest this past weekend, got some things on track. Can they get some momentum going? They're going to need it versus a high-flying Syracuse who wants to put the ball into the secondary practically every single snap. Right now, Kyle McCord closing in on 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. So it's a weak secondary versus a very high-octane passing team. They're averaging 31.7, throwing for 381.4, running for 93, giving up 27.8. So there's also going to be opportunities for Miami to score the ball. They are the number 1 offense, and they can run the ball. They're not just a pass-happy team. They love to lean on you second half, dominate on the ground. They have Martinez, Fletcher, Allen, Lyo, Restrepo, George, Horton, Arroyo, Williams. So many weapons on offense. That's just the offensive roster here. But for Syracuse, they have Allen. They have Meeks. They have the weapons to be able to compete with you. But I have Miami winning this game as they always do second half, dominating, owning the fourth quarter, starting to pull away. They win this one 42 to 28. I have them covering that spread, and I'm going with the over. And then another ACC game on ESPN2 at 3:30 p.m. 6-5 Cal. Cal has a really good defense. They get a lot of takeaways, top 10 in interceptions. They'll be playing number 9, 10-1 SMU. SMU's already booked their ticket to the ACC championship, so this game really doesn't matter. However, you want to take the chance that you want to win this game, because if you lose the ACC championship, maybe you'll still make the playoffs, and you want to have a lot of momentum going into that ACC championship. Well, you'll be playing either Miami or Clemson. SMU 13.5 point favorite. The over here is 56.5. They have a 83.1% chance to win this game. Cal, they're led by Mendoza, closing in on 3,100 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 picks. They're averaging 27.9. They're giving up 20.7. This is a defensively focused team. They want to get picks, but SMU is going to make that very difficult. They can throw it. They can run it. They also play solid defense. Since Jennings has filled in for Stone, there's been no looking back. He can throw. He can change the game with his legs, picks up massive yardage on the ground. He's closing in on 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. They're averaging 39.3, throwing for 267, running for 184, only giving up 21 on the ground. They have Brashard Smith. They have Daniels. They can run. They can throw. They're going to dominate this game. They're going to finish the season hot. Props to Rhett Lashley. He really has this team cruising. They're going to win this one 35-20. They cover the spread, but we're going with the under. And then 3:30 p.m. on the ABC network, 5-6 Auburn. Auburn coming off that upset win versus the Aggies. We did pick Auburn to win, so we were not surprised. They'll be playing number 13, the Alabama Crimson Tide, at 8-3. Alabama's also coming off of a loss to Oklahoma, where they got beat down on both sides of the ball. How do they respond here? Probably out of the playoffs, barring complete chaos. But can they still play for pride? Can they get the 9 wins? Can they give themselves the potential to get a 10-win bowl win? Right now, Bama is the favorite, 11.5 point favorites. The over here is 52.5, and Alabama has a 87.7% chance to win this game. For Auburn, you finally saw what can happen if they play a clean game. Peyton Thorne kept the turnovers down. They were able to establish the run. Right now, they're averaging 29 points a game, throwing for 275, running for 172, giving up 20.7 points a game. They have a very good defense. They're going to be on the road here. There's an in-state rivalry. Anything can happen. Auburn almost beat Alabama last season. Right now, Milroe, he has to play a clean game. Looked really sloppy this past weekend. He's closing in on 2,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. They're averaging 36.2. They're giving up 17.5. But the biggest issue to me is Milroe is the offense. Too much is on Milroe. They need a running back. They need someone to step up in the run game to take the pressure off of Milroe. He should not be the leading rusher right now. They also have Ryan Williams as the receiver. But Auburn, they have Hunter. He's closing in on 1,200 yards rushing. They have Lambert Smith. He's just shy of 900 yards. They have multiple weapons. They have a good defense here on the road. They can take advantage of a beaten-up Alabama team coming off of an upset loss that kicked them out of playoff contention. But I have Alabama riding the ship here, rallying the wagons, getting everyone back on track. They win this one in a close game first half, but they own the second half. They win it 35-23. I have them covering, and we're going with the over. And this next game, to me, it's such a pick 'em. It's a 50-50. This game can go either way easily. At 3:30 p.m. on the SEC Network, 6-5 Arkansas. Do not judge them on their record. They're actually pretty good. They'll be playing number 21 Missouri at 8-3. Missouri, 3-point favorites. The over here is 54, and Missouri has a 97.6% chance to win this game. No one's giving Arkansas any chance, but they should be. Just ask Tennessee. This is a very competitive team, especially if Green plays clean football. He's closing in on 2,600 yards, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks. He also has 7 rushing touchdowns. Sam Pittman took a lot of pressure off of his seat earlier this season. They have Bobby Petrino calling plays. The guy knows how to dial up plays specifically for every single opponent. They're averaging 31.1, throwing for 293, running for 185, giving up 24.6. A very solid team, especially on offense. And for Missouri, the big question for them is how healthy is Cook going to be, because they have a veteran, experienced roster. Cook's closing in on 2,100 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. They're averaging 29.2. They're only giving up 20 points a game. Very solid defense. They have the veteran playmakers. Noel, Weiss Jr., Burden, who's probably going to be the number 1 wide receiver taken, if not top 3 easily. And for Arkansas, they have Jackson, they have Armstrong. They can counter that with their own offensive weapons. But Missouri has the slightly better physical defense. I think that's going to make the difference here late in the season, week 14. They win this one 33-27, high-scoring game, but they cover the spread, and we're going with the over. Now it's time for some Big Ten football at 7 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. 1-10 Purdue. The worst team in the Big Ten might be the worst team in the Power 4 right now. They'll be playing number 10 Indiana, 10-1, coming off that loss to the Buckeyes. But so much chaos. I had them making the playoffs no matter what. You can't finish 11-1 out of the Big Ten, not make the playoffs. That's just hating on them. Come on, guys. Let's be honest here. No matter what, they're going to win this game. They're going to finish 11-1. They are in the playoffs for sure. They're ranked number 10. They're going to be led by Rourke, who's closing in on 2,500 yards, 21 touchdowns, 4 picks. They're still averaging 41.3. They have a top 10 offense. They throw for 269. They run for 168, giving up 16 points a game. Still, even after the Buckeyes game, only giving up 76.1 yards on the ground. That's elite. Purdue, they're averaging 17.2. They're giving up 37.5. There's going to be lots of opportunities for Indiana to score. They give up about 2.5 more points than they score. That is a bad mix. They have a lot of holes to fill. Card really has his work cut out for him here. They're not going to be able to throw the ball because they're not going to have time. They're not going to be able to run the ball. It's too hard to run on Indiana. Indiana, just make sure you keep your guys healthy. Make sure you get them all to the postseason. I have the Hoosiers cruising here. This game's never in doubt. They win it. Well, first off, they're 29-point favorites and over-under of 56.5. But I have Indiana win this one 42-10. I have them covering that spread, but we're going to go with the under. Make sure you keep your guys healthy. There's no need to run the score up here. And then another one of our Big 12 games when anyone could potentially be making the Big 12 championship on Fox at 7:30 p.m. Number 24, Kansas State, 8-3 versus number 18, Iowa State, 9-2. Anyone can win this game. Iowa State, though, does potentially have the chance to be making a Big 12 championship game with a win here. They are the favorites, 2.5-point favorites. The over-under is 51.5. They have a 54.2% chance to win this game. This is a 50-50 pick. Either one of these guys could easily walk out of here with the win. They're both very good teams. For Kansas State, they have Avery Johnson, the highest recruited player in Kansas State history, closing in on 2,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 9 picks. He has 6 rushing touchdowns. He can change the game with his legs. And for Iowa State, this is a Matt Campbell team. They play disciplined, physical football. They have Beck closing in on 2,900 yards, 18 touchdowns, 8 picks. Kansas State averages 30.5. They throw for 219. They run for 210, one of the best rushing teams in the nation. They're giving up 21.3 points a game. Their weakness is their secondary. Attack them through the air. They give up 253 passing yards. They give up 108 on the ground. For Iowa State, they're averaging 31.4. They're throwing for 276. They're running for 163. They give up 19.5. They might have the best defense in the Big 12. Their weakness is running on them. They are giving up 176.4 rushing yards. They do give up yardage on the ground. Kansas State, they can run the ball. They have a top 5 running back. They have DJ Giddens. He can light it up. He can run for 150, 200 yards here. And they have the mobile quarterback. They have Jace Brown. He can change the game at the wide receiver position. But Iowa State has Hanson, Higgins. They have the weapons there to make this game competitive. But due to Iowa State's rush defense playing Kansas State's rush offense, it's going to be strength on strength. I have the Wildcats pulling out the upset victory, winning it 30-27, going with the plus 2.5 and the over. But like I said, I don't want to go anywhere near this one. And we're saving the number 1 here for close to last. At 7:30 p.m. on NBC, we have Washington 6-5 versus number 1 Oregon Ducks 11-1, unanimous number 1. They are 18.5-point favorites. The over here is 50.5. They have an 88.8% chance to win this game. This is going to be a really fun game here. This is a Pac-12 rivalry game. Dan Lanning lost to Washington twice last year. This is a completely different Washington team. He doesn't care. He wants to beat him. He wants to beat him bad. But hey, you're number 1. There's nothing to prove here. As long as you win this, you will be number 1. Keep your team healthy. You're going to be playing potentially the Buckeyes in the Big Ten Championship. You want to make sure you're fully healthy there. It's hard to beat a really good team twice. Just get your full roster there. Right now, Washington led by Rodgers, closing in on 2,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. And Oregon has Heisman hopeful Dylan Gabriel, closing on 3,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's also ran for 6 touchdowns. Washington, they're still having issues punching it in the end zone. They have turnover problems in the end zone. They're averaging 22.6, giving up 20.5. Very stout defense. And for Oregon, they average 33.9. They throw for 291, run for 166. They're only giving up 15.7 points a game. That's a top 5 defense. They have James, Johnson, Stewart. When they're healthy, this is an extremely gifted offensive roster. They can throw it. They can run it. They play defense. And for Washington, they have Coleman. They have Boston. They have the weapons there. But to me, they don't have the offense to be able to compete in a shootout. But this is a rivalry game. Both of these teams want to win this one. They both want to represent the Pac-12. But the Ducks are on a mission this season in the Big Ten. I have them winning this one 34-17, still going with the plus 18.5, and we're going with the over. Get those starters out early. No reason to leave them in. And one of the best rivalries, two teams that haven't played since 2011. Number 3, Texas Longhorns 10-1 versus number 20, Texas A&M Aggies 8-3 on ABC at 7:30. Obviously, Texas, they're number 3 in the country, the number 4 overall roster in the nation. And the Aggies, we had them losing last week. If they lose this one, they're going to get kicked out of the top 25. But they are playing for respect, not for rankings right now. If they beat Texas, they could still represent the SEC in the SEC championship. That's how crazy this season is. Texas, 5.5-point favorite. The over under here is 49 points, and the Longhorns have a 77.3% chance to win this game. They got to make sure Quinn Ewers stays healthy this game. He's closing in on 2,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 6 picks. They're averaging 36.5, throwing for 292, running for 170, only giving up 12.1 points a game. Even though they've had an extremely easy schedule, do not underestimate Texas's roster. Wisner, Helm, Bond, and they have that defensive line getting a lot of pressure. They're going to make it tough for Reed to get going, having time to throw the ball, having those lanes to be able to rush the ball. Right now, the Aggies are averaging 32.5, giving up 21.5. This is a Mike Elko team. They play really physical defense, but with the loss of Moss versus an extremely aggressive Texas Longhorns defense, to me, that should be enough to get Texas the victory here. I have Texas winning a close, hard-fought game, 28-20, covering the spread, but going with the under. But setting up that rematch versus the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC Championship. That's going to be a fun one. Hard to beat a good team twice. And then at 8 p.m. on CBS, 3-9 Nevada versus number 22 UNLV at 9-2. UNLV, Sluka leaves. Williams has stepped in perfectly. This team never looked back. He's closing in on 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's also ran for 8 touchdowns. He's extending things. He's a game changer on the ground. They're averaging 38.7, throwing for 195, running for 245. One of the top 10 rushing teams in the nation, giving up 22.7 points per game. And for Nevada, Lewis has to play a clean game here. They're averaging 23.8, giving up 28 points a game. Everything is setting up for UNLV to dominate through the air and on the ground. They have Ricky White. They have Williams, Thomas, multiple weapons. The better offense. Just make sure you don't get upset here. I have UNLV getting the win, getting to a 10-win season. Props to them. Really strong season. They win this one 38-20. They cover the spread, and we go with the over. And our final game of the last weekend of the regular season for college football at 10:15 p.m. on ESPN. 4-7 Houston versus number 19 BYU, who sits at 9-2, who also still has a chance to make the Big 12 championship. Right now, BYU 13-point favorites. 41 over-under, and they have an 87.2% chance to win this game. Let's make it clear. BYU lives off the turnover. As long as you give them turnovers, they always turn the turnovers into points. But if you don't turn the ball over, if you play a clean game, you force BYU to have to go the length of the field. Kind of takes them out of the way that they want to play football. Right now, Red Slap closing in on 2,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 10 picks. They're averaging 30.8, throwing for 248, running for 157, giving up 20.3 points a game. They have Martin. They have Roberts. They got to get the ground game going, and they want to generate those turnovers. And for Houston, one of the worst offenses in the nation by a long shot. They're pretty bad right now. They're averaging 13.6, giving up 22.3. The fact they're only giving up 22 is pretty commendable because they're only giving up 13 points a game. That is really bad. That puts your defense in really tough positions. BYU, they're going to win this game. Houston's come close to upsetting some pretty decent teams this season, so you don't want to sleep on them, but you should be able to beat them, especially if you think that you are Big Ten championship caliber worthy. I have BYU winning this one 28-14. We have them covering the spread, and we're going to go with the over. So that's our best bets for all of our top 25 matchups for Week 14 of the 2024 college football season. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments on these games or anything else, drop them below, and I will respond. Thank you.